that the carbs on the package are wrong. They're usually within 10% supposedly. It could be that the child is more resistant to insulin or more sensitive to insulin for whatever reason, right? It could be that not absorbing as well because there's other things already in the body. And it could be the wind speed, it could be ambient temperature. There's a lot of other things that could be affecting the blood sugars. What's that?
The phase of the moon?
Phase of the moon, yes. And if your astrological sign as well.
Anxiety levels for various reasons of that growth.
So it is, I am a dietitian, and I think some of the hardest part of this is carb counting because it can be very vague. That being said, is that you want to try to get as close as you can to the estimate of carbs. And the thing is that if it is an ethnic food, so I actually looked up samosas because I like samosas, and I looked up a recipe. And so one way, if you have a way of cooking a certain food and you make it kind of in a similar fashion, is that get all the foods that you put in. So samosa has flour and potatoes and a lot of different spices and oil and butter and all things like that. Get all the carbs for every single thing, add the total carbs together, and then the one that I looked at, it was the samosas off of the Food Network. So it's not real, it's probably not as good as some people make, right? But, it says it yields 18, and then, divided the total amount of carbs by the 18, and it was about 21 grams of carbs per samosa. Now the thing is, I know that different people make things different sizes and things like that. And then also you're not always sure about the exact amount of spice or salt and that kind of stuff. Then the parts that are important in what you're making is the things that have carbs. If your aunt mixes with a little bit extra spice or a little bit less salt, or puts a few extra things, different types of spices in that doesn't have carbs, don't worry about that part, and try to figure out the total amount of stuff that has carbs, the flour, the potatoes, those kind of things like that, and then divide. And then if they make this recipe, kind of makes 20 pieces, and then you kind of try to divide by that, and that's a starting point. And the thing is that it's not exact, but it's kind of kitchen the ballpark. I also am a big fan of pupusas. Do you guys know what pupusas are? I love pupusas. And there's not a really good pupuseria around here, unless you know one. Let me know if you know one. I know, there's a great one right off of, in the Mission, across the street from the community college. That one? Yeah. I know where that one is. I like that one. And there used to be a really good one in Seaside, right close to the aquarium, and so we go to the aquarium and then we go to pupusas. It's closed. It's like, dude, it's so sad. So anyways, the pupusas turn out to be about like 25 to 30 grams per pupusa, depending on the size, because it's made of flour and then has little beans inside. And so that's at least a good starting point. And whatever the food it is, it's good to have a kind of an estimate. And one thing that I also like to bring up is that there was a study done in Italy, which one of our colleagues, Bruce Buckingham, showed me about, which I really liked, because it's a study where they had a precise dose of carbohydrates that was measured by dietitians and also like that, and then they had somebody give the insulin ahead of the meal, and then another subset of people give the insulin at the time of the meal, and another subset of people give the insulin after the meal, and then they looked at the results of how their glucose levels resulted. And then they also did another part where they had the people give the full amount of carbohydrates for the insulin at the time, the start of the meal, and then they also did 30% less of the insulin needed for the carbohydrates, but ahead of the meal. And so what do you think the results are of that particular study? It's a small study, there's only like 20 people or something like that, but it was kind of enlightening, I thought. Before the meal made a bigger difference, and actually the people that underdosed before had better overall, glucose control, if you did not try not use good or bad, right? But their blood sugars were more stabilized and not as much of a spike. And so if you have no clue of the carbs in the food you're about to eat, dose ahead of time, at least to give yourself a good running start. And so that, that might actually help out a little bit. And then the other piece that I encourage people to do is that if you have no idea of the carbs, your best guess, right? And then check a blood sugar 2 or 3 hours later, or follow the sensor, and then see if you need to do an adjustment on that. And then even if you knew the carbohydrates exactly right, you would still might want to do that anyway, right? And even with some of the precisely measured foods, we had a thing when there was a person in a study that kept going high after every time they went to Noah's Bagels. And they went to specific Noah's Bagels, and then, the Noah bagel had like 90 grams of carbs for a 6-ounce bagel, right? And they were given the insulin dose appropriately, and they were looking at the website, and then finally we said, like, why don't you bring one of those Noahs in? And the problem is that it was listed correctly on the Noah's website, but the guy or woman who was making the bagels was a little overzealous with the size of the bagel. So it wasn't a 6-ounce bagel as listed on the website. It was like an 8 or 9 ounce bagel. So the size was a little bit bigger. And so even though we're giving the right dose of insulin based upon the website, that particular cook was making them a little bigger. And so just to throw a little bit more fun into the whole mix of carb counting, right? So even though you think you have it just right, it cannot always work perfect. Yes?
Question. So, just because I have an iPhone, it's helpful sometimes for me to kind of know general carb amounts for certain foods. How accurate generally do you feel like MyFitnessPal, those types of apps are for counting, not calorie, but carb counting? Especially for Asian food, because I noticed they have quite a good range of Asian food.
Yeah, and yes, and so the thing is that and also the people who are probably putting that information in might not be Asian. And might not be as familiar with that particular type of food. I think all of the websites and all of the apps can really vary. So one of the things I was looking at when I was looking into my samosa thing is that it required, one of the ingredients was fresh ginger. And, a tablespoon of fresh ginger, how many carbohydrates do you guys think is in a tablespoon of fresh ginger?
0.
Very, very, very little. It's like 1 or 0.9 or something like that, right? And so I was just like, I was trying to be as precise because I know you guys wanted to, I was doing this thing. And the fresh ginger, when I went on the MyFitness app, one of the things it said, 1 tablespoon of ginger, and I think it was off because for that 1 tablespoon of ginger, it said 15 grams of carbs. It's like, dude, not true. So then there's several listings. And so I went to a different listing and did the 1 tablespoon and it was 0.9 grams of carbs. I'm like, because I think you got to have a lot of ginger to get 15 grams. I think there's a lot of fiber in ginger too, so it's like not gonna make it. So however much ginger you put into whatever thing, I wouldn't bother with the amount of carbs. Right? There's not enough bang for the buck. When it comes to a lot of any ethnic foods, Asian foods in specific, is that look at the things that have a lot of carbs, whether it be rice, the potatoes, or the flour. Kind of generally try to get an idea of how much is that stuff, and all the spices and the oils and the fats and all that. Like, don't worry about that. Focus on the things that actually have the carbs and kind of get your rough idea of things. And before and after checking can help as well. But getting back to the question about apps is that I haven't found one app that I like the best all the time. Because I don't know if you guys seen Figweed. Figweed is an app on iPhone. So the other fun part I really like about apps is that if you have an iPhone, there's a nice list of apps. And then if you have an Android, there's a different list of apps that are not the same. And some of them, like there's a couple that work on both, like MyFitnessPal works on both. But then there's some that only work on Android, some only work on Apple. And full disclosure, I do have an iPhone, and so that I have more listings of things that are Apple compatible because that's the thing that's in my pocket, right? But I have a dietitian who works in our clinic, has an Android, so I'm like, what about this? What about that? Try this, try this. So Figweed is one app that I like if you do not have a measuring cup or anything like that, because what it does is say you want to look up corn, and you say corn on the cob, and then it'll have a picture of a corn on the cob, and then it has a thing that you have a little, like a thing that you go up or down, and you can increase the size of it, and it has the size of a salt shaker and the plate, so it gives you an eyeball kind of estimate. Although, with fig wheat, I've found a couple of times when I've looked at things like that is so wrong. You know, like I was looking at popcorn or something like that, and it was like, nah. And I think it's like $2. Did you check? Is it $2? They gone up, yeah. It's been popular. So that is one that I kind of like for like I don't know how many carbs are in watermelon, right? And then I don't have a measuring cup or a weight scale or like that. So then oh, it looks like that. It's kind of like that. That's a good eyeball thing as well. Yeah, things to add to use
Well, I was just going to say, way back when I was first taught learning about diabetes, there was a study done where they did the exact counting and dosed on that, and then there was they had another group that guesstimated and dosed on that, and what they figured out they followed these long term for a while, and what they figured out was most important was being consistent. So if they consistently said, this much rice is 15 carbs, and dosed on it as 15 carbs, if it raised the blood sugar, then they increased the insulin for that. That was more important than being exact for what the number was. The important part was being consistent and then checking the blood sugar 2 or 3 hours afterwards to figure out, did I give the right amount of insulin for what I said that was? And if you didn't, then change it next time that you're going to do it. So that was a little secret I learned. Somebody else was talking, I think Candy was talking about learning to cook with a handful of this and a pinch of that. So I was raised in a family where my grandma was Mexican, and that's how she cooked. And so I make Sonoran-style enchiladas that are like a fried patty. And my grandma gave me the recipe, and it was to watch her cook. And it was a handful of this and a pinch of that, and so I wanted to figure out for some friends, once I learned diabetes, how to figure out the carbs for that. So I took her recipe and put it into measuring cups so that I could figure it out. But I also figured out that the important part was, kind of getting a guesstimate and then just being really consistent with, because the patties are different sizes depending on which one of us pats it out and fries it, so they're different sizes too, so that made a difference. Candy?
Can you talk about sauces? I don't know about Asian sauces, and where we might find different carbs or
Oh yeah, so a lot of sauces are just made out of vegetables or tomato or oil, but also sometimes the thickened sauces. What do you thicken sauce with?
cornstarch.
Cornstarch. Cornstarch doesn't have a gaggle of carbs, but it has some. But it does add up, right? So a little bit of corn. Yeah. Yeah, because cornstarch was actually used in the Extend bars, uncooked cornstarch, because it gets absorbed so slowly. I used to work with a doctor down at LA that developed the Extend bar. I'm not promoting it anymore. It's just like a bar that kind of tastes kind of funky, and had some cornstarch in it so that it has a very slow absorption. So, but yeah, the cornstarch does often get thickened in the sauces, and also sometimes people put sugar into the sauces as well. And so then, so a simple example that I like to use is that, chicken McNuggets. Not ethnic at all, right? But, chicken McNuggets, you say, okay, well, you can look at the thing and it says that, a 6-piece chicken McNugget is 18 grams of carbohydrates because it's breaded, right? And so then people give insulin for the 18 grams of carbohydrates that kids are eating. They fail to realize that they're dipping 20 packets of ketchup into their chicken McNuggets, or 4 or 5 packets of the barbecue sauce, which each packet of barbecue has like 12 grams of carbs. And so like why my blood sugar is so high? Because I don't know how your kids do it, but my kids like ketchup on their ketchup. And ketchup, a tablespoon of ketchup is like 4 grams of carbohydrates. It does have some sugar in it. It does add up. There's I saw a T-shirt once that said, "I like ketchup on my ketchup." I need to find that because it's totally accurate. On a side note, for years, my kids would put ketchup on everything, and it was kind of gross. Like barbecue, like broccoli ketchup, corn ketchup, eggs ketchup. And finally, about a year ago, there was a day where they dipped something in ketchup and decided that it was gross. Any guesses? It was a breakfast thing.
Cereal.
Cinnamon roll.
No, it was banana bread. Which, I think I agree, I didn't really want to try it, but I'm like, mark the date. They don't like ketchup and banana bread. Or I was going to show you that, are you guys familiar with weight scales? And this is not something I would recommend use all the time. This is my own from my own house. Can you guys still hear me? Do I need the microphone?
I can hold it for you.
Okay. Can you still hear me now? So this is a scale that I got just off of Amazon. The thing I like about these is it has the nutrition facts information. You can get a digital weight scale that you just says 20 grams or 15 grams, and that works fine. And then you have to go online to figure out how many, if it's 28 grams of this weight, how much it is in carbohydrates. This one is nice because you have this little code book, and so you type in the code for like strawberries, and then you weigh the strawberries, and then it gets you the exact precise amount. I find it also, so I discourage people using this all the time. One way to really if you have a teenager and you want to really embarrass them, bring this to the restaurant. It's weighing stuff out. That will really embarrass them, right? But no, never do that. I think you just embarrass them enough by breathing. But anyway, is that whatever the food that you're trying to figure out the carb amounts. So your breakfast cereal, of course, put the bowl on, zero out the bowl, so you make sure you don't weigh the bowl as weight. That has happened. We had a kid that was having some very significant low blood sugars because they're having lots of pasta, and they're weighing the plate as well as the pasta amount. Bad idea, don't do that. Zero it out and then put your food on there. Jen, you remember that kid? Yeah. Anyways, but then it gives you a very good estimate. And so if you're how strawberries come in different sizes, and you look on the websites and it says 3 medium strawberries is 8 grams. Well, I have these big ones and little ones. How many carbs is that? You can get a couple strawberries, and you put on and get the weight of it, and get the very precise amount, and then you can say, okay, well, this amount of strawberries is 20 grams of carbs. So next time I have a similar size, I can give a good estimate. So I really like these for the fresh fruit and the baked goods, because baked goods, if you go to a bakery, you cannot have the actual amount of carbs because it just says this is cinnamon roll, right? And then again, of course, don't measure the things out forever, because then you get your cereal bowl, and then you know that your kid loves having cereal and their Snoopy bowl on a regular basis. You just gave the cereal up to the Snoopy's nose is about 30 grams carbs, whatever that is. So the next time you have to keep measuring over and over again. So I'll pass this around. You can press the buttons on this. It is mine, personal one from home, and so it has used because I oftentimes measure things for cooking and stuff like that. So, but look at the code book, and it tells you the gram, the carbs. The only thing is that when you turn the thing on, it will. If it's not flat, it gets grumpy and it says "Do not use." See right there, it does that. So keep it flat.
One thing I'm going to add to Barry's weighing and measuring things in the beginning is one of the things I've learned over my many years is I'll tell people just do it in the beginning and then don't do it after that for a while. And then I find a year or 2 or 3 years down the road, I need to say, why don't you go back to measuring everything again for a few weeks? Because their bowl of cereal that was 30 grams of carbs has become a bigger bowl of cereal because they're like, oh yeah, that's still 30 grams. Oh yeah, that. And so it's become a bigger bowl of cereal. And I don't care if they're going to eat more cereal, that's fine. But they need to measure it again and figure out that, oh, now I'm eating 60 grams of carbs because I'm pouring more in. because I've grown, because I've changed, because I wasn't filled on that. And so, and they, you know, after you get in the habit, and sure, if you have something like a Snoopy bowl and you're pouring it up to the nose, that works. But as you grow older and you don't have, you know, some sort of character or something, you can misestimate. Oh yeah, that looks like about what I used to pour for 30 grams. So just, you know, periodically spend a week where you measure everything again, just to kind of, okay, how close am I?
Portion
Yeah,
Pardon?
portion creep.
creep. Called
Yes.
portion creep.
Exactly, portion creep, exactly. Somebody else was talking about goods and bads numbers. That I think you were bringing that up. That you were. So we always, when we're teaching, we always teach to not use goods and bads. Just use they're in target or they're out of target. And it's just a number. It just means we either need to give more insulin or less insulin. It's not a reflection on what they are doing or how they are doing it.
Even though I've been doing diabetes care for 17 years, I still mix it up. I still say good or bad sometimes. So I still try to avoid the judgment of the amount of insulin people are taking, the amount of the blood sugar is, and how amount of carbs they're taking in, and just trying to get, because at some point in time, if there's continual judgment, kids very quickly will fabricate information or give you just no information. Couple of two things. I think I was also asked to talk a little bit about family style eating. We have one family that they actually have one big bowl and everybody eats out of the one bowl. I've been thinking about that for a while, and I think there's no good way to estimate carb counting if there's a family of 6 and everybody's eating out of the same plate. I can't think of a good way to carb count that kind of thought. Does anybody have any ideas of one big bowl, everybody eating out of the same?
So they're not putting on their plate?
Not on a separate plate.
So you'd have to count the number of times you dip into the bowl or the plate.
I might
Estimate.
eat less
Yeah.
maybe for noodles, right? So
What-
For
so-
the child, like, is counting every
The
time
family.
they grab
Yeah.
their portion and then,
Multiply by the number of carbs in each.
yeah.
So
And
they
they-
full standardized cut maybe, and then everybody's set cut too.
Yeah, so that,
Putting on
They're
their
not
they're not putting it on a plate.
eating from a bowl. It's the big bowl and everyone dips and eats and dips.
I think the same thing happens when you eat like potato chips from
Oh, yeah.
a bar. So I think so I think the best way, I mean, I've tried is just to take whatever I want to eat and then put it in my plate, and that's it. And
Yeah.
give them like one bolus for that. That's
Yeah.
the only. Otherwise, I don't think it's gonna work.
Yeah, I
And
couldn't
because it
think of
will
a way.
cause insulin stacking and then hypoglycemia after
Yeah.
that. So that's the best way, I think.
And I think if it's family style where there's a main plate and then you're pulling things onto everyone else's plates individually, so you have your own plate, my suggestion with that would be having a standardized measuring or a standardized serving spoon or serving thing, so that even if it's not an actual measuring spoon, ahead of time you could measure out, okay, this spoon scoops out half a cup of stuff. And so then you get, that person got 2 spoonfuls of this cup and this is around 30 grams, whatever it is. You can have that way to estimate, but, and I think that's one way. They also have these ladles that, you know, are specified measurings that you can use for measuring, for serving as well. That's if you want to get more technical. Yeah, because the family style can be tricky. And I think with that also is giving some insulin ahead of time, even though if you're unclear the amount of carbs, that can help. You know, I know that there's some families that are really young kids that they're not sure how many carbs they're going to take in. If they're on an insulin pump, you can give the insulin for the blood sugar plus, you know that they're going to have 20 grams, but it could be 20 to 80. You can give the insulin for the correction plus the 20 grams you know they're going to eat. If they're on an insulin on injections, then your options are, you know, give 2 injections, or you have to do some estimations with the 1 injection. Right? Yes.
Yeah, when we say carb counting, not all carbs are always equal, right? Like,
Oh no.
For example, dinner he says add 0.5 because I want to have ice cream.
Mhm.
But 0.5 for ice cream, the 30 grams is not same as 30 grams of rice or bread. So how do you count that?
the simple carbon. I was about as I was going to add water. Same thing, right? I don't know whether I should do juice. all the kids drink juice in lunchtime. We don't give juice because it's simple carbs. It just spikes up that thing, right?
And I disagree with juice for everybody, except kids with low blood sugars.
Oh, that's very pathetic, right? So it's okay to substitute like a vitamin water, which has got 2 grams, something like that. Something like that.
Yeah, so the tricky thing is that all carbs are not created equal. And if you wanted to get more technical, which I will discourage, is you can get into this thing called the glycemic index, because there's foods that get absorbed faster or slower. The thing is that you can, and the problem is that if you have ice cream, it gets absorbed a little bit slower because of the fat. There's sugar, and there's a fat that gets absorbed slower. So 15 grams of carbohydrates from an ice cream source is going to work differently than 15 grams from a juice source. That's why we recommend something like juice for lows, because it works so fast, where ice cream for lows, although I like ice cream, doesn't work great for lows. Also, chocolate does not work great for lows, although I like chocolate a lot, right? But the glycemic index also says that, like, okay, this amount of food, this is how quickly it gets absorbed. But then to throw fun into that is that as soon as you add 2 or 3 food items with different glycemic index, you get this glycemic load, which can be different. And so then, so the glycemic index was really built, okay, you eat 1 slice of white bread, and then you wait to see what your glucose level does. And so it gives you, okay, this is how quickly it gets absorbed. You have 1 amount of ice cream, and this is how quickly it gets absorbed, right? And then you have 1 thing of popcorn with the same gram of carbohydrates, and this is how quickly it gets absorbed. Problem is that then when you put the popcorn, ice cream, and cereal all mixed together, who knows how it's going to all get absorbed. But the general concept is that when there's more fat in food, that's going to get absorbed slower. If there's more fiber in food, that's going to get absorbed slower. The less sugar and more complex carbs. So when it's starch, that gets absorbed slower.
The question of juice, I understand it's very huge low.
Yeah.
But I feel very bad not having juice every single time, right? Generally, all the kids like juice. I like juice. You like juice. Everybody likes juice. It's
American Academy of Pediatrics actually now has changed their thing. They try to limit juice in general, say no more than 4 ounces for kids under 6 years of age. My perspective is that juice is not needed in anybody unless they're treating a low blood sugar and they have type 1 diabetes. The thing is, all kids like juice, and the thing is that juice and sugary beverages in general increase weight gain, increase risk of type 2 diabetes in everybody. And there's a lot of negative things with sugar-containing beverages, not just juice and sodas, all these fun things like that. And so I don't feel bad, and there's also a huge amount of people that are having juice at a very young age, and it causes tooth decay. And so we have a lot of our kids that are low socioeconomic status that they're having juice in the bottle and all that kind of stuff like that. They're having all their teeth getting replaced, at a young age because of juice. So I don't feel bad about giving. And my kids, they have water bottles. They drink water all the time. Every once in a while, we go to a party, and all the little kids are getting juice boxes, and they're like, "What's this?" But it's something that it's not in the house. It's not something that we have. I think juice is a good treatment for low blood sugars because it works so fast. But in general, I usually discourage juice for everybody. But that's my opinion. I'm a dietitian.
It's my opinion too. As a nurse, I raised 4 kids many years ago. They're all grown adults now, and I didn't give juice to my kids because it just seemed like I was giving them candy. So they got juice when they went to birthday parties. They got juice sometimes when we were going out on a picnic, and it was easier to throw the boxes of juice in to go do something. But they only got it also on those occasions and with a meal. It wasn't like they were just handed juice to drink and wander around. And I had a lot of my friends whose kids wandered around with cups of juice all the time. And I just didn't feel that that was a healthy choice to make. So my kids wandered around with water, but they weren't allowed to wander around with juice. And like I said, juice was a treat in our house, just like sodas were a treat in our house. And they only got, when they got a juice or a soda, it was with a meal, you know, so that I felt like it kind of balanced it out a little bit. You know, so I was really weird though, because my kids are all in their 20s, you know, so that was not the norm when I was raising kids. They were handed juice a lot, and that, but I didn't feel like there were the health benefits that people seem to think there is.
Juice. Even people say, well, what about I get a whole bunch of stuff from the farmer's market, I come back with my juicer and I juice all that stuff. And so then basically you have sugar water with some vitamins in it, vitamins, right? And also, you know, you come from the diabetes standpoint of things, and so if you, let's say you get a bunch of, you know, organic carrots and you put them in your juicer and you get all this organic carrot juice, and then what does your juicer do? It throws out all of that fiber. And then even if you have some that keeps the fiber in there, right? So then, since it's broken down already, it's absorbed at a faster rate. And so for diabetes, is that carrot juice is going to bring your blood sugars up pretty quickly because you're getting rid of all the fiber, all of that, and it's going right into your bloodstream. If you have it blenderized, where it still has all the fiber, and you haven't get rid of the fiber, is that you've taken away the job of the body, where you normally eat a carrot, you chew, and then it goes in your stomach, and your stomach kind of mashes it around a little bit for a while, and it goes in your intestines, and you slowly absorb it because it has all this work to do. If you do carrot juice, it goes right into your intestines and goes right in and brings your blood sugar up. So that's my perspective. And the other thing is that I want to talk a little bit about is that when we're doing, you know, changing things around in the family because of diabetes or, you know, carb counting and stuff like that, very important to not do, okay, this is your food and this is our food. It should be all of our food. And if there are some slight changes when diabetes takes place, we want to make sure that we do consistent things for everybody, so that it's not like, oh, okay, well, you have some special diet stuff and then everyone else gets it, whatever. Because I've seen it go really bad when there's these, you know, a family of 3 or 4 kids, and the kids that don't have diabetes are snacking on candy, eating juice, and stuff like that, and the kid in the exam room while the other siblings are just munching all kinds of things like that, that kid with diabetes is sitting there. Like, that's not fair. And the thing is that, you know, there's somebody, you know, kids today, okay, I'm going on a tangent now. kids today, oftentimes they're getting snacks constantly, see them in the park, and the kids are constantly just, parents are handing them stuff and things like that. Do kids really need to be snacks and things like, you know, having something to eat every few hours? No. Infants, newborns, need to eat every 2 to 3 hours. So I think our middle school kids or toddlers can last a couple hours without a snack if their blood sugar's not low, of course, right? I think they can make it. And so it's okay if they go several hours without having a snack. And then people will say they don't eat anything at dinner. Well, because you've been giving them snacks all day long. Yes?
And the other thing, when you were talking about our food, your food, I think you could talk a little bit of what might happen when it's the cuisines are very different from home and the school, just kind of culturally sometimes. Like if a child, you pack a nice, delicious hot rotis with samba, and then the kids go to school, they might not be eating what you've packed, and then it might be, the pizza that they're serving. So kind of talking about sitting with your child, and I guess I should just say it, but like sitting with your child and being honest what actually gets eaten during the daytime, I think is important, and knowing how to count those carbs and use the school, because I think sometimes the families get so good at knowing the ethnic foods at home, and when you go out, it might be ethnic foods within your children. When they go out, or when they have their control, or when they're with their friends, they also need to know some of those other foods, because they may not be necessarily eating more cultural foods.
Well, and I know my kids traded food all the time. So, they'd come home and there were like this extra stuff in their lunch, leftovers, and I'm like, whose lunch was this? Oh, I traded. So-and-so never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before, and I wanted their samosa or their whatever, and so we traded. And, if you have diabetes, the complicating factor is mom already counted up your carbs. And I don't want to tell a child with diabetes you can't trade, because my kids experienced some really cool new foods that way, because it wasn't mom trying to convince them to eat it, They're like, oh, we should buy this, or we should get some of this, mom, or learn how to cook this from this mom, And so I would say, like Dr. Aya said, you gotta teach your kids, well, if you're going to trade, then go talk to an adult about what the carb difference is, It's okay to trade, as long as you figure out if there's a real big difference in carbohydrates, so that we're giving you the right amount of medicine for what you're eating.
And sometimes kids will want to fit in more if they're bringing in some ethnic foods from home, and then everybody else is at school is eating the pizza and the hot lunch or eating peanut butter and jelly. They're like, okay, I want peanut butter and jelly. It's like, we don't make peanut butter and jelly here normally. That sometimes is more of a fitting in kind of thing, and that's something that it's good to have some flexibility with that. My wife is Latina, and she always brought little bean burritos to school for lunch, and then she kind of realized in elementary schools that no one else brings little bean burritos to school. And then she wanted peanut butter and jelly, and her mom's like, "What? What's that?" And she didn't. And she had to borrow a peanut butter and jelly sandwich from a friend, brought it home, like, it looks like this. and then she's like, "Wait, where do I buy this stuff? It's at the store. It's peanut butter. Okay, can I make a chocolate? Okay." And so that's part of having when we have kids going into schools with multiple cultures, it's good to learn the other cultures and kind of try other things like that. And we gotta bend around it when we're doing the diabetes stuff, because we shouldn't. We hope that we want to work the diabetes around kids' lifestyles, not their lifestyle around diabetes.
I think another thing, because we're talking about Asian foods here, we talked about a lot of carb counting. But then, for example, Iranians, so they have this famous dish called chelo kebab, and it's basically cooked rice with a kind of large steak. And in my experience, I know we don't usually count proteins, but with that kebab, this large steak, in my experience, I have done some calculation. I just wanted to know your experience about this. I do usually calculate the gram of protein and then just divide it by half and give it like an extended kind of bolus, and that worked for me. I'm just wondering if you had any experience on that.
So then that gets into much more complexity when we talk, because carb counting is the biggest bang for the buck, is the most effect on the blood sugars is in getting the total grams of carbohydrates, but we don't focus on protein and fat, but protein and fat can affect blood sugars. And when people are having a large amount of protein, baked steak, that can affect blood sugars. And people who are on an insulin pump or who are really trying to fine-tune their stuff and seeing that sensor values, you find that giving a little insulin for those high-protein foods can actually keep those blood sugars a little bit more stable. There's different methodology for how to estimate that. I've heard having about half of the total grams of protein and then giving insulin for that. I've also heard for every 100 calories of protein and fat. You give it as 10 grams of carbohydrates. Ends up being about the same thing. I did the math.
You're bringing up an important point here. So is there a website that gives you a generic guidance on the glycemic load? Because that's what it ends up being, right?
Yeah.
Protein plus carbohydrates.
Yes.
That's actually the most difficult part of carbohydrate counting.
Yes. So
Is there
there are
like a
several
website
websites,
for-
and
for that guidance?
a lot of it is through Australia is really big into carb, glycemic load and glycemic index. So a lot of the research and stuff like that from the glycemic load and glycemic indexes come from Australia. The overall consensus is that it's best to count the total grams of carbohydrates because it has the most effect on the blood sugars. Looking at and being aware of the glycemic index and glycemic load can also affect the blood sugars. The amount of effort goes into calculating the glycemic load has a slightly beneficial effect on overall blood sugar control. So, but so that I don't have a specific website. Though at times I look up glycemic load, it always ends up going into an Australian website typically.
Can you tell us what that is?
I mean, I just Google it typically,
Google it,
or
okay.
Bing it.
Because what you just said, right? 50% of protein, you add, that's like 10 grams. You treat it like 10 grams. So that's the kind of.
But I would say maybe a small amount of protein, 1 or 2 ounces. I mean, I think the basal insulin can cover for that.
Yeah.
But anything
Okay.
like a large, bigger than that, I mean, you
If
can
you're having a
use
20 ounce
that,
steak, yes,
yeah.
you might want to give some insulin for that. But most time kids are not having a big monster steak. But yeah, and it's usually you hear 40 or 50% of the grams of protein can eventually get converted into glucose. And so if you're having a 10-ounce steak, each ounce of steak is equivalent to about 7 grams of protein. So that's 70 grams, and then you divide by half, or about 40%. So then you're saying it could be 30 grams. You're giving it insulin. You want to extend it over several hours, 4 to 6, or something like that.
What's the formula for music?
There's multiple formulas.
that's
So
what I was
one
thinking.
formula is about 40%, 40 to 50% of the grams of protein, and so if you're eating the 70 grams, about 40% of 10 ounces of so 70 grams of protein, about 40% of that is like 30, 28, something like that, right? And then you get that as carbs.
Okay.
So you say 28 grams of carbs, but then you extend it over an extended period of time, 4 hours or more.
That's actually a lot, 40%.
Yeah.
And for fat,
Fat has a little much less.
but do you have a particular way of doing those?
So the only way I'm aware of including the fat
Yeah.
is that you look at the calories coming from fat and protein, and for
Okay.
every 100 calories of fat and protein, you add it in as 10 grams of carbs.
For every, I'm sorry.
So for every 100 calories of
Okay,
fat,
10 grams of
you add it as 10 grams of carbohydrates.
Okay.
And that kind of ends up being close to the similar
Wow.
40% or so. So there's a lot of math involved. If you
So
like
when
to do that.
somebody uses a pump, can these things be programmed in the pump?
No.
Because like right now my sons after school, those folks will call me with the blood glucose number and say, hey, this is the card. And it doesn't sound that simple. Like when you there's so many other factors to be taken into account, right? But they just read from the packet and say this is the card, and I give them the the insulin number. From what you're talking, what we are doing is like very primitive.
Yes, but then the other piece is that give the insulin ahead of time, and then you're seeing the sensor value or the blood sugar values a few hours down the road, 3 or 4 hours, and the dose of insulin that you didn't work, giving a corrected dose to bring it back into the desirable range, it's going to be working well. So people who are aware of their blood sugars, using a sensor, using multiple checks a day, 4 to 8 checks a day, and making adjustments along the way, they're going to have very good success with their diabetes management.
It's more like trial and error.
What's that?
I won't say trial and error, but it's more like learn as you go.
There's the science part of caring for someone with diabetes, and there's the art part. What's going to work in his body, and that's what you have to figure out.
And then the fun part is that you'll dial it in
And then he
this
grows.
week. And then he grows and it changes, and then
Or
it's
his
all out the
hormones
door.
hit, or
And then you gotta reevaluate everything, and then start over again, and you figure it out again, and it doesn't work again. And then, of course, once you become adults, it's a little bit more stable. The hormones are not as crazy. But then there's still things with, as adults, that when you're going through times of stress, or if you're going, involved in more activity or less activity, can all have an effect on diabetes level.
And he's a male, and he could say things are a little less, or a little more stable. And I know my female friends who have diabetes have much more variation because of their hormone effects than the male friends who have diabetes.
And the other thing is, you mentioned recoil earlier, right? Like there are different ways of giving bolus, like one after food, one before food, and things. I know one T1T parent, she said they have a pump, so she usually gives the correction before the food, and after she gives the bolus after that she finishes the food. Is that something?
Best to give the insulin for the carbs and the bolus and the food, the blood sugar and the food ahead of time. But if you have on an insulin pump and you're not sure of the total carbs, but you know that they're going to eat 30 grams, give the insulin for the blood sugar ahead of time. The 30 grams you know they're going to eat, and if they eat 80 grams at the middle or the end of the meal, add in those extra 50 grams that you to account for the missing carbs. The only thing is that if you think that they're going to eat 80 grams and you give insulin for 80 grams and they only eat 50, then you're short 30 grams and you got to find another way to get those 30 grams in the stomach because you can't suck the insulin out. I think Dr. Ahmad is working on a way to suck insulin out. Isn't that some of your research?
Leeches.
Yeah, leeches, yeah.
Pumps do have ability to give in waves. So let's say the party you are going and you don't know when he's going to eat, what he's going to eat, and how long this party is going to last, and all those things. You can do it waves.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't started using the pump yet, he's still waiting for the problem. But our problem was more like, he'll say that he will eat, or he won't eat, or he'll say that he won't eat and he won't eat. So, that way it's very hard to calculate the value.
And then also kids at a pretty young age realizes that they need to have control over some of these things, and it can really make the parents twitch when they say they're going to eat stuff, they give the insulin, and then now you're short 50 grams in his tummy. That really gets the parents up nervous, and it's like now I say, okay, I want my new PlayStation video. Exactly.
Ice cream.
It's very smart. It's like, I want McDonald's fries now. Make them hot.
I will walk you through a scenario. Okay. Last week, my son was 78. Okay, it's before lunch. Okay, so the estimated cost was around 30. We have to give 0.5 units. So we were scared to give blood for 78. We were showing down arrow the CTMs. Okay, so we did not give. We gave the food, okay, short of like 80 or something like that. And then we thought, okay, we give a lunch correction or something like that. After he came home from school, we gave a correction 2.5. Then it started going down way faster. It was, so we don't know whether we are doing the right thing or not. So help me clear, how would I have done that differently?
I'm going to put the question back on you. Hindsight is 2020. What would you have done if you can go back in time and tell yourself, do this at that very first dose?
So because it was 78 down here, right? I didn't want to give any incident at all. That's because I was scared that it would go low. Okay? But after he ate the food of 30, estimated about 30 to 30 grams of carbs, it shot up way past 280 or something like that. So then I went, okay, that's a correction. This is my chart. Okay, this is the range. In this range, I will give 2.5 units. And then I gave 2.5 units of Novolan. In another 40 minutes, it started coming down. So I don't know what I would have done. I don't know. See, that's why I'm asking this question.
So then I'm going to ask the people here, what would you guys do? Because I have a suggestion, but I want to see what everyone else thinks.
I would pre-dose, but I would subtract the half the unit, right? Because it's less than 30. So I would still pre-dose, but I would.
For you?
But just at the beginning, and I would less increase the dose, but not give it after.
So you're getting into a quarter dose, quarter unit, which you can do. It's tricky, but you guess at it, right?
Yeah, we would dose just for the 30 grams he ate, not the correction, like 20 grams.
His blood sugar was 78, so it didn't need to be correct.
Yeah. So
So
That's
you
what
didn't,
happened was
you didn't
exactly
give a
happened.
dose at all, you just gave him food, right?
Yes,
I
so
understand.
because it was down there around 2 p.m.
Right.
Which means it's going to go down further down.
Yeah.
So I was skeptical giving mankind.
And stop overreacting. That's first thing.